Thank you very much. I hope we can still have the discussion. Yeah, we are very late, but I think all the presentations were really very, very interesting and they all made sense together. So I'm not going to spend one more minute on this. I mean, please raise your hand if you have questions. And since we have 20 minutes, if you can identify clearly to whom you ask the questions and make your question short, or if these are comments, short as well, so that everybody can get to respond to what they've presented. Raise your hands as soon as you want. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. And so I take 2 or 3 in a row. So 1, 2, and then 3. Yeah.
Although the speakers have covered most of the aspects, I just want to make 3 observations. One is that drop in the incidence of manual scavenging led to its replacement by waterborne sanitation, which further resulted in more danger to the lives of those who were involved in cleaning of septic tanks and sewer lines. So there is some need to make designs of septic tanks and sewer lines, some changes so that these gases, hazardous gases, do not get accumulated, and they are discharged on a simultaneous basis, so that when these people enter these manholes or septic tanks, this possibility of getting asphyxiated due to these gases is minimized. There is some need for, that is another. And one or two speakers mentioned about this National Spy Karamcharis Finance and Development Corporation. No, it was set up to rehabilitate manual scavengers, but very little progress is there in terms of, and not many spy karamcharis are aware that there is some commission like that. And very interesting thing is that somebody said that there is a bias on the part of those. In fact, this is one of the few offices in Delhi which feels shy of even putting up its notice board in front of the building. There is a building in Greater Kailash too, where this near this metro line. They removed this building because those working there, they feel shy of saying that they are working in an office like that. So there is also that body which was set up to create job opportunities or wean them away from this. They have been not very successful in creating what they should have been doing. That was it.
My question is related to laboratory chemicals, laboratories which are very much here. In Delhi and around the country, I don't think we have made any special arrangements to have special Safai Karamcharis to keep the laboratories, even while building the labs. I think mostly we have not taken care of the people who are going to clean the chemicals. Sometimes even the mutagens were thrown in the drain. I am a retired agriculture scientist from the Indian Agriculture Research Institute. My name is Dr. Rajni Raman. But these we have been facing, but nobody thought of such chemicals being used in the laboratories. And I think that many of the workers were using cleaning the laboratories without realizing what is happening. So there should be some basic concept of building laboratories. The laboratory concept is given to any tekadar who brings the tender very fast. So building the laboratories is very important to save the Safai Karamcharis from using the chemicals, cleaning the chemicals, because they may be having a lot of health hazard to them. I am referring to the occupational hazards. This is the biggest hazard which they will never realize while they were working.
Yeah.
My name is Prakash. I am from India People's Science Campaign. Taking a cue from Mr. Ravikant Joshi, that due to ODF, there is a chance that, or there is a likelihood that the number of manual scavengers will increase, and it is increasing in fact, as the statistics reveal. Now the problem is that the entire discourse has a binary. On the one hand, we say that manual scavenging based is banned, and the workers are reportedly rehabilitated. But on the other hand, transition from dry to wet has compounded the problems of increasing manual workers and has also environmental hazards. In terms of the safety aspects, which have largely been ignored so far, the question is that so much of waste is being dumped into the environment, liquid as well as solid. It also creates a lot of feedback on the community. As we have seen in a particular case study that lady has done in Ekta Vihar area, that's no man's land, and the entire area is getting severely impacted. So I think there is a binary, and we need to address while doing action-based research, and that agenda needs to be formed up.
Thank you. Okay, Aditya, and then we.
Hi, I'm Aditya and I'm with CPR. So I have two questions, one for Neerath and the other for Manish. So my question to Neerath is the numbers that he mentioned during his presentation. So are these projected numbers that they arrived at from their work in Warangal alone, or have they relied on any sort of data sources? And my question to Manish is on the Prohibition of Manual Scavenging Acts, both the 93 and the 2003 Acts. So are there any provisions, any clauses in these acts regarding prohibiting employment through contractual ways of the manual scavengers, or has there been no mention and ULBs have found ways to circumvent this particular absence of such a clause?
I don't know if Neerath is still here, but yeah. So you want to answer?
Anahita will answer.
Yeah, but did she hear the questions? Okay, Manish, then you answer the question and maybe you tell what was the question.
Yeah, so while you catch up with the question, I'll answer the one that was addressed to me. So the definition of manual scavenging includes all kinds of employment. So it says directly or through contract, directly or indirectly, and by employment or through contract. So it covers all kinds of engage, and in fact it uses the terms engage or employ. So even if you engage someone, like employment is generally understood as a relationship for pay, some like work done for pay. But even if you engage somebody on a non-payment basis or on some other basis, all of those aspects are covered under manual scavenging. Whether so, like, whatever municipalities might or might not be doing is not necessarily a loophole in that sense. And the local authority is, and the primary employer is responsible in all of these cases.
But there is no culpability involved.
Yeah, so that, one of the things I think in terms of criminal prosecution is also about getting government employees or making public servants culpable. Because especially in sewerage networks, where sewer networks are generally owned by some public authority, there is so for instance, there is no accountability about that. So for instance, in the deaths of some sewer workers in Bhawana, there was a lot of back and forth between DSIDC and Delhi Jal Board over who was responsible. Like both of them were trying to wash off responsibility for themselves. Last year in Bangalore, to the best of my knowledge, there was some attempt at where a BWS, the Bangalore Water Supply and Sewerage Board engineers were named in an FIR that was registered after workers died in the pits. It's also important to understand that the Act has a regime of strict liability, so there is no sort of plausible deniability by employees, by public employees, right? So if you are a sewage engineer, you're responsible for all the manholes in your jurisdiction, and you cannot claim that I did not engage this person to clean it, etc.
The question that was raised to you was whether the numbers you've arrived at, I guess Aditya was referring to the numbers of future number of workers, right, Aditya? Right?
Also, the current projections that you mentioned in your presentation, so are these projected figures from your work in Warangal, or are these figures that you have arrived at by working out some data sources?
Yes, and I would add that if anybody among the presenter want to take up, because I think it relates to the question of tension, I think which is very clear in the what has been presented this morning between the abysmal situation, the lack of rehabilitation, and whether there will be so many more workers entering this field. So, how do you see that tension? And maybe if some of you who have been spoken this morning want to take up that important question, I think. So you can start maybe by answering, and if some of the other speakers want to take up the larger tension question.
Yeah. So those numbers were projected only. We've been working in Warangal, Trichy, and Delhi. So we did a survey in these three cities, and based on those, we projected those numbers, and we believe them to be true. And then there's a Genesis project which says that there were about 2 million workers involved in sanitation works.
So our numbers cover 9 different types of work that range from drain cleaning to latrine cleaning to septic tanks to fecal sludge handling to even domestic workers. So these numbers are projections based on the study that we conducted in Trichy, Warangal and Delhi, like Venkat said. And from that, we kind of estimated that there are 5 million sanitation workers. Within the 5 million, there are about 2 million that are domestic workers. And so, like he mentioned, that Jan Sahas has actually also projected about 2 million workers.
Yeah, when I said that there will be future requirement of 1.6 million additional workers, not manual scavengers, but sanitation workers, it's based on the 3 things. We estimated the way Swachh Bharat mission has created, say, 6 million new toilets. Now there is a norms, CPHO norms, and they have prescribed in that what should be the scheduled desludging. Now, if we get the scheduled desludging this regime, then there are technical limitations, and those formulas can be worked out that one septic tank emptier, how many people can be covered, what will be the requirement of the per day average number of the septic tanks to be cleaned. Similarly, till date we have government has claimed that 60,000 wards have been door-to-door collection of the solid waste. Now that is going to increase, and suppose in next 5 years all the wards and all the houses are covered by door-to-door. So then you have that calculation that how much population is still not covered by door-to-door solid waste collection, number of the vehicles required, number of the drivers required, number of the septic tank emptiers required, and then number of the FSTPs which would come, because we will require FSTPs to treat this fecal matter. So calculating that, we arrived that there would be requirement of, even if mechanization happens, correct, but there, as somebody pointed out, there is a binary, there are larger paradoxes. See, railway has a program of putting sanitary latrines. Today, tomorrow if they do it, nobody is thinking of a human element, that is the impact of cancellation of those number of the jobs these people would lose. These are at the bottom of the pyramid and poor, and top of that they will lose the job, and the larger issue is of reskilling them and fitting them in other alternative vocations, because mechanization has to come in, because mechanization is not only to remove them from the job but to ease out their safety norms. When he will use some machine, his contact will be removed and he can do it in a dignified way. So therefore I pointed out that there is a binary, that on one side there are triggers which will increase the number of the sanitary workers required, and therefore the safety issues and those will increase. But at the same time, as we go for the mechanization, there is a larger need of reskilling them and rehabilitating them in alternative vocations.
Very clear. If we take a second round of questions or comments. Okay, there at the back. Then, yeah. Yes, come to the mic.
Hi, my name is Shreyas. I'm from Carnegie. from all of the presentations, I figured that some of the solutions to tackle this problem is first try and ensure that the workers themselves understand their rights, they're included within the formal sector, and that a certain level of mechanization is brought into the process that will then automatically ensure that they have, that there's less work that they themselves have to do in this labor-intensive sort of this. But I think one of the, I think, Devash, you can answer this question, is a lot of the problem is that the whole process is itself institutionalized by the state, where there's either outright denial or, for instance, the Maharashtra government ensures that if there's a death, the job moves on to the next of the kin, or the railways itself is employing. So unless and until they themselves sort of ensure that alternative skilling is provided, or that there's some sort of rehabilitation themselves, how can we expect the informal sector to take the steps that the state institutions themselves are not taking? So yeah.
Okay, is there any other question? Because this is the last round, so it's your last chance to... Okay, so Devashish, you have the last word finally.
Well, I wish I didn't, because this is unfortunately the one question I was reading. How do you resolve this problem? I don't know. I wish I did. I really don't know. The economics of it is complicated, and it's complicated because social aspects of it bring in certain market failures which completely break the system. One is right in thinking that if there are 6 crore more toilets, you will need a certain number of more manual scavengers. At the same time, the demand of manual scavengers, or rather the supply of manual scavengers, is not as elastic as you would think. There aren't enough people. I wouldn't move into manual scavenging tomorrow because there is more demand. There is a limitation on that. There is also a limitation on the exit of manual scavengers if there isn't enough work. At the same time, when you have, so for instance, why would one go about mechanizing? Why would the market, for instance, why do you need state intervention? The market would go towards mechanization only in the circumstance where the work needs to be done, but there aren't enough people to do it, and there are people who are willing to invest in it. That cannot happen because of 3 reasons. 1, there are enough and more people to do it. 2, the system in which the whole manual scavenging concept, even most Dalit occupations, the Jajmani system in the villages that it works, it doesn't follow market principles. They live on doles of the people who they are supposed to, their jajmans, for instance. It doesn't work on a payment basis. There are no bills being raised. There are no records being kept. There is no system to it. It's a very difficult thing to naturally transition. The structural transformation, as economists would call it, cannot happen in this situation simply because of these breaks. Therefore, the state needs to intervene. Now, whether the intervention of the state in its current form is sufficient, I don't know, because it has honestly not been implemented properly, so one doesn't know if it's sufficient. When it does get implemented properly, then we can comment on whether it's sufficient. At the moment, nothing is happening, and therefore one can't really say if the state is doing enough. The second problem is that how does one actually get people out of this and sort of get more... So if you look at the 3 components of the SRMS as it presently stands, one is this cash benefit. The cash benefit is simply to tide things over while they move on to other sort of elements. But that presumes that they have the choice to move to something else. The second is this setting up a business. One is that sociologically, unfortunately, these communities don't have that entrepreneurial sense or even the sense of self-efficacy where they believe they can set up a business. A very simple answer is, मैं अगर दुकान set करूँगा तो कौन आएगा मुझसे खरीदने? Who will buy things from me when people don't even want to share water with me or space with me? Why would anybody buy food grains from me or small little petty shop items from me? And if not that, what else do I do? What kind of entrepreneurial options are available to anybody in rural areas, much less manual scavengers? That's another problem. The third problem is, of course, this whole skilling business. Now, one doesn't know what skills are being imparted, what use they are, whether they are able to break past this system or this notion that they are meant to do this kind of work. One doesn't know. And so, therefore, the skilling itself, of course, will be low wage employment that you might get from some government organization somewhere. So I have reservations about the structure of the program itself. But forget that. Let it at least get implemented and let's see what happens with it. I mean, we are unfortunately all in the business of research where we're really not allowed to say things without really having anything to back them. The frank answer is that we can't evaluate the success of the scheme till it gets implemented, and till evaluated, we can't really come up with better solutions. So we don't know how to make it work. Sorry. Yeah.
Next session. Yes.
Most of the questions will be answered then. If not,
Yes.
then there is a lunch we can eat and keep it.
Right.
So running out of time.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, this was very useful discussion. Thanks, Mari, to moderate it. We are going to have a second round of discussion on how, if these are the problems and challenges, how are we going to move ahead? And for this, we have Raman from WaterAid, he's a head policy. He is going to moderate this session. And then I can invite people here because it's not going to be a presentation, it's just 5 to 6 minutes. You know, what are the thoughts that are coming into the mind and how we collectively as networks or as individual organizations can take it forward. So Raman, can you come in front? And Ravikant Joshi sir, it will be good to have you considering what the ministry and the government is thinking to take it forward. Raj, Neerath, or you can come because Neerath has left us. And Shashi from Priya. And you can co-moderate.
Am I required?
Yeah, Amrish, please come. Come in front only. Come. So, yeah, Raman.
Okay. So, we are close to 35 minutes late now. So, we need to very quickly come up with the thoughts. So, I was listening to various presentations and some questions that has come up. I would like to summarize the questions here. Not necessarily expecting that all those questions are going to be answered during the discussion. But these questions, listing these questions may be important. Some of them may not be relevant for the research purpose or for action purpose, but still those questions I thought, to place them in a proper place is important. So I thought broadly classified in a very quick way off the cuff, so there can be kind of issues there. So the first thing that I thought was addressing the problems faced by the most vulnerable categories of sanitation workers. Of course, all of them are vulnerable. I'm not saying, they're not, but within that, the typology that Dalberg has presented and others. So there's a type of large range of workers. So how to address those? So that question comes in. And within that, how will we do the need and actual situation assessment? Because, if you can see, the government data varies from one source to the other within the source itself, and our own kind of assessments from various field locations and others, they differ. And, if you look at the need, the actual need across the ground, the need is quite huge, and the situation that has been presented, there is a mismatch. So how are we going to address this particular problem is a issue. And the third one, which came to my mind, is this dignity and identity question. So dignity and identity question, here we have to address caste. Debashish was at the final thing, was addressing some of the burning issues there. So addressing caste, migrant identities, and developing an agency for building dignity, those kind of questions came in. So how are we going to look at the dignity and identity questions? And then next one was coming as safety and health question. Safety and health question in the sense, safety when it comes to death, there is a lot of cry and a lot of issues coming in. What about the regular life? What about the Jhansi case study of Priya brought in critically? What kind of regular issues they are facing? So what all are the solutions? How to build solutions? How to understand the issue in a deeper sense, and how to build solutions over there? And then how to provide regular healthcare service access to those people wherever needed. And substance kind of dependency is a major issue as came in. How to help on those areas. So health and safety, lot of questions coming in that side. And another safety aspect which was coming in, we talked about safety gears. But often the safety gears are developed for the climates, wherein it's easy to wear. We are in a tropical climate. How are we kind of going to think about the bare bodies of people are going into because of the specific difficulty that they are facing. So what is the assistive device, what is the kind of safety gear which is appropriate for our own kind of situation, how to develop those is a kind of question coming in. And the Ministry of Urban Affairs very recently has came out with a standard operational procedures, SOP for engaging sewer workers. Yet not in the public domain. They released it, but we had to access it. I was part of giving inputs on all that. How to get those SOPs implemented? What is the kind of pressure that is needed for getting this? I'm sure when Raj yesterday was telling me after visiting a place in Jharkhand, they are not even aware about these SOPs, or even a year-old developments are not aware. So the reason they may not be aware at the municipal level. So how to look at that? And how to develop safe cleaning agents, laboratory issues. Someone was raising a question about workers in the laboratory, workers in the hospital, so sanitation workers in the hospital. So how to enhance safety by way of developing those kind of cleaning agents and all that. Those kind of questions are coming. And then the major question coming, the scale that SBM has introduced, the large scale of sanitation challenges. And the rural areas, the enhanced number or the enhanced need for more workers has come in as an issue. So within that, how are we going to develop rural solutions for the fecal sludge management, so that the strategies for rural fecal sludge management, so that these issues can be addressed within those kind of strategies. Then mechanization came in as an issue. As you rightly told, there is an issue about structural approach. From the manual to the mechanical kind of thing, you have to introduce a lot of systems. So what is the systems approach that we are talking about? How to develop a systems approach within that, and how to address this complexity that Debashish was pointing out. So how can we find solutions on that? And then coming to the equity question, which you are kind of suggesting, like job security, informal workers' welfare, how can we talk about it? And then pay and compensation, equal parity related to that. And then workforce management. Is there at all anything about workforce management in this sector, and how to develop those kind of concepts? And who owns? That is something, when I was in Lucknow recently, I found that this honeysucker, who got that name, I don't know, the honeysucker machines are owned by mostly Brahmins. But it is run, the workers are from the Dalit community. This kind of paradoxes are there. So who owns, who works, and who oversees, how to change the paradigm in this is a kind of critical question. And the gender issue that has come in as a discussion, so how to look at within the sanitation work. Of course, because of the added vulnerability, the sewer workers things are coming in as the first page news quite often, but not necessarily the struggling other side is coming up. And then the entrepreneurship options, how to develop them. And finally, the financing part, which is the critical one, I think, how can we kind of study very well and look at the financing, so not only financing solution, but also the implementation of financing, which is the most critical part, I think. And finally, one of the important thing that is happening is slowly and steadily the sector organizations are engaging on this issue. From 39, I think in Madurai, the Madurai municipality, one of the first ban of manual scavenging started quite way back. From that to now, if you look at water sanitation hygiene sector organization, how much are they active in this issue? If not, how to make them active? And this knowledge gaps, awareness gaps, all of those issues are partly, the answers are there. So how can we do all that? So these were the kind of series of questions listening to all this presentation came to my mind. So I would like all panelists to address one or two of these, or even something new which I may not be able to, I would not have failed to kind of list, capture. So please come in without any what you call. So you can come up with some kind of discussion. How can we initiate research? How can we initiate action? How can we initiate advocacy? Whatever. Yeah. Thank you.
Not all the questions can be answered, because we all will have to work together, academia, government, civil society, and other organizations. But our team means Technical Support Unit to the National Urban Livelihood Mission. It's a Gates Foundation funded technical assistance, and me and my team started working from 1st July. So I raised three issues: social vulnerability, second is occupational, and economic vulnerability. Now, first thing we have done is that we have come out with a convergence guideline between the Swachh Bharat Mission and National Urban Livelihood Mission. It is available on the ministry website. What essentially we are saying that Swachh Bharat Mission will be creating this job requirement or requirement of a sanitary army which need to be skilled. Now, how we go ahead and do the skilling? Not to keep them in that sector, but to solve the issues of the safety and to increase their dignity and the safety standards. So what we started, as I earlier said, there was not a single vocational standardized course in sanitation. So from last year, we are working with the National Skill Development Council and Green Job Council, Sector Council, which is mandated for these. And the 4 QPs have got developed. And on day before yesterday, in National NSDC, they got approved. One is about the waste picker. Second, about the septic tank technician, where the masons would be trained how a correct septic tank should be constructed. Third is about the desludging operator, the person who operates the vehicle and those who go on that vehicle. And then the fourth is about the FSTP operator. And fifth is in offing is a FSTP supervisor who would manage the entire FSTP, that is fecal sludge treatment plant. Now these 3 or 4 QPs would create a standard and would elevate their stature to the skilled labor, because there will be a NSDC framework certificate to them. But this is the only first step we have taken. From next, as I said, we will have to train big way skill training providers. We will have to empanel them. We have started that work. So on one side, this skilling, and then somebody asked me that whatever manual scavenger, those processes and those things were provided, we have covered that into the curriculum. And we had widely circulated it to the industry and all that. Still, last stage is pending is the national qualification, NCQF. Once that gets clear, but now with the QRC approval, we will be able to conduct the courses. With that, government will be able to finance it, the last stage. So on one side, this skilling. Second is now NULM mission allows formation of the self-help groups of the male scavengers. And all the people, means we know the SSG, women SSGs, but now sanitary worker and all the people who are in this kind of a job, their SSGs can be formed, and then they can be entitled for skilling also and for the help which comes, financial help to this. This is basically to overcome their social vulnerability. And third thing on skilling side, we conducted successfully the first FSSM based RPL, because we have lakhs and millions of sanitary workers who can't go a fresh course in sanitation. So there is a recognition of prior learning and a 7-day module, wherein this all safety aspects and everything. Earlier presentation pointed out that they themselves don't know what are the safety standards, how they should use different kind of things, how things are changing, what are their rights under Manual Scavenging Act and other acts. So comprising that module, again we developed with the Skill Job Council, and in Denkenal, Orissa, last month, Practical Action had identified 450 manual scavengers. We took 50 out of that, and first batch, that training was conducted, certificates were issued. Second happened in this month in Bhubaneswar, and after World Cup hockey, another 300 such kind of scavengers and workers would be trained on an RPL model. It's a 7-day package wherein they are provided financial assistance, safety gear kit is given, and training with the practical. We actually help them to learn how to operate that desludging vehicle and what safety standard, how to open that, how to save themselves from the gas and all that. Orissa government is in talk with conducting, and then through the NSKDC framework and Ministry of Social Justice, 10,000 sanitary workers with this RPL. And that national seminar and workshop kickstart may happen in January. In fact, this week, our ministry will be discussing with the Ministry of Social Justice with this big program across the India, where in big way this RPL model will be done for those who are already in this field and who knows or who are working but who don't know all this newer aspect about their rights, safety standards and other things. Coming to the occupational this, we are trying to mainstream the sanitation related enterprises through women's of the SSG, and we are also working with the ASCII and Warangal, Dalberg in Warangal and 3 cities of the Orissa, that is Berhampur, Denkanal, and recently, as I said, there is a USAID project in 4 cities for sanitation for all. In that also, in those 4 cities, basically we are trying, because once you come under the NULM, you get the skilling free of cost, you get the money for having your self-help group, and third is that you get a highly subsidized loan, that is 2 lakh rupees per individual. Group enterprise means 5 people can come together and have 10 lakh rupees. So we are forming CIGs, common liability group we call it, or common interest group, and the SSGs can have 10 lakh rupees loan. So that entire convergence, and we are coming out with a compendium of a successful micro enterprises in sanitation. It's not like that it is not happening. Many women SSGs are handling sanitation related enterprises. So bringing them into, as somebody pointed out, it is the who is owning is a Brahmin, but that has been, look at all these door-to-door collection vehicles. They are owned by the politicians and the people who have the capital. So a new class of sanitary entrepreneurs is coming up who has a capital and who has nothing to do with who is working on field. And as Priya study pointed out, in every city, if we go this in outsource contract, the payment is very low and they are absolutely unregulated. So these are the 3-4 initiatives, as I said, on one spectrum to have skilling net framework created, ecosystem for entire skilling. Of course, there is a long way to go. We have to identify STPs, we will have to do the TOTs, and actually we will have to run the course. It's a 200 hours new course. Now somebody will ask why somebody would come into this as a fresh candidate. But those who have no other way and those who want to continue, at the same time, we are taking up a big project under National Urban Livelihood Mission with the Social Justice for alternative skilling. And there they can take any course, carpentry, electrician, plumbing, and all those. I know this is not a solution to all the issues, but this is what the new things which are happening at a ministry level. And we are working with the NSKFDC also and National Commission on Safai Karmachari. I hope some of the issues we will be able to sort out, and then all other organizations will join and we can take it forward.
Thank you, Raviji. It was very nice to hear that, the convergence is happening at the national level. And one of the recommendations or some possibility of a solution, we also looked at in our study, wherein we thought that because city ULB is where the sanitation workers are directly, linked with the governance. So a lot of convergence needs to happen at the municipal corporation level. Now there are multiple national level schemes which are actually implemented in the state through these state channelizing agencies, which have provisions, and also because all these workers come from SC/ST communities, there are number of provisions on health, on scholarship, and on pension funds also. The thing is that there is no convergence. If all these schemes can converge for sanitation workers, it will actually be very beneficial for the system as well as for the workers. But this needs to be again complemented by a lot of awareness generation programs and capacity building. And somebody said that it is very difficult actually. See, alternative employment or promotion of entrepreneurship within the schemes, if you also, you just give out provisions and you roll out these schemes, they will not be successful if it is not looked at holistically. So just giving out loans is not the solution. Hand-holding support is needed. Continuous follow-up, feedback, everything is required. And as well as the policies need to look into number of elemental issues. For instance, our research actually found out that a number of children of these sanitation workers who have minimum education qualification, like they are 10th pass, 12th pass, and some of them are also graduates and have not been able to find jobs outside the sanitation work. Now, on the other side, the narratives also pointed out that हम ये काम करते हैं, हमारे बच्चे ना करें, ऐसा ही हम सोचते हैं. But the thing is that why is this not happening? Despite such a huge number of stakeholders, huge number of schemes, this is not happening. So there has to be some reason. So lot of our policies and schemes should get inputs on these nuances, that why is this not happening, because the education is not relevant to them, the current education system is not relevant to them and their work and their future. So these things need to be incorporated into the policy. I would like to make a couple of more points. So another thing that we were also really looking at was that the current political economical scenario, we all know that the permanent jobs have stopped and there are no vacancies being created. Dalberg presentation said that ULBs are very poor, things like that. So of course this is not going to change. But what can really change is that if we can advocate for designing enabling contracts, why a contractor or a contracting system needs to work on a hire and fire policy. They say that it will bring efficiency into the workers, but the efficiency is reduced the moment you disable them. For instance, women sanitation workers, they do not get maternity leaves, so the last day of their labor pain they go to work, and immediately after 6 days of giving birth to the child they go back to work again. Now, what is the justice in this system? So the contracts must be enabling. They should be fair. They should, all the categories of workers, they work equally. They work for 8 hours. They handle similar kind of stress and occupational hazards. So contracts definitely can be enabling, and we need to really advocate for them. And again, it is a very common knowledge that safety gears have to be enforced, but it is not being enforced. I think one study needs to be done, and action research needs to be done, that what is the problem, that despite taking into cognizance by National Safai Karmchari Mission, the PEMSAR Act, and number of news reports on deaths and disturbances, despite that no enforcement of safety gears is happening. Why is this happening? I have no idea. And there is so much of fury, but nothing is happening. And even in capital cities like BMC and NDMC, it is not happening. Early in the morning, if we go out on the roads, nobody is wearing a mask or wearing a jacket or a footwear. So this is something which one needs to look at. Then we have certain schemes already in place in case of sanitation workers in general and women sanitation workers in particular. We found that there is no formal complaint redressal mechanism. However, under Sexual Harassment Against Women Act of 2013, it is mandatory that every institution should have an internal complaint committee and should have a LCC, which is a local complaint committee. This needs to be ensured, and civil society organizations have a very huge role to play in their constitution. Apart from that, I would also just like to bring out that in this whole study that we did is also part of our project, which is Engage Citizens in Responsive Cities. Now, under this project, we have basically we have mapped all the informal settlements in all the 3 cities. And within the informal settlements, we have created settlement improvement committees. Now, one of the important stakeholder is the civil society organizations of urban poor, and they have to be amplified in terms of their responsibility. So I will just share one example. In Muzaffarpur, there is a tola called Mestar Tola, and we have already shared that Mestars are also sanitation workers in Bihar. So this is a caste-based community. Now in Mestar Tola, there was a community toilet which was not functional and it was not working. So this settlement improvement committee, they got together and because they clean everybody else's toilet, so basically they thought, why not let us make it functional. So they did their own advocacy. They talked to their ward councillors, and now they have made it functional. Now they have also started rolling their responsibilities in cleaning that toilet. And apart from that, there is a citizen forum. So citizen forum has also taken initiative to, do the wall paintings and communicate to people कि कचरा वाले हम नहीं हैं. कचरा वाले हम हैं, कचरा वाला नहीं आ रहा है, things like that. Some very important, poignant messages which have to be given out. So, the other day, sir was actually saying कि a perception mapping of middle class people needs to be done on how we look at garbage and how we look at sanitation workers. So, these are some of the areas in which our research can happen. Thank you.
Yeah, so, no, Mr. Joshi, go ahead.
Just one small point. Even ministry has announced an award this year for the ULBs, because she raised the ULBs, 10 lakh rupees national award, those who will be mainstreaming the sanitation related enterprises or work through SSGs. So this year that competition, already 70 ULBs applications we have received, and by February that award will finalize. This is mainly to incentivize ULBs and to create the competition so that the sanitation related micro enterprises can go ahead, and the ULB is the fulcrum or the main agency which can support them.
So, thank you so much, Mr. Joshi and Sashi. I thought I'd add a more implementation-based aspect to our discussion. So, we had our sanitation workers project, which Nirat presented to you early in the morning, and from that, in April of this year, we held a summit where we wanted to take 16 of our prioritized solutions and actually develop proper pilots. So we had representatives from the government, we had people from NSKFDC, we also had people from PRIA, NIUA, we had private companies who work in the sanitation sphere. We had them all come together and prioritize from our 16, 4 to 5 solutions, and then create pilots. So it was a 2-day summit, and we got 4 pilots out of them, and I'll just discuss what they're about, basically. So our sanitation fellow is actually implementing them in Warangal right now. We had a behavioral change for safety program where we had a 3-day capacity building training in Warangal that was organized with Kamshala, and they basically targeted 300 sewer cleaners and gave them training on what is the correct safety gear to use, what is the correct process, what are their rights, and what should they ask for if they feel like they're not being addressed. The second one was enabling entrepreneurship, and it's a lot like what Mr. Joshi just said, that the NSKFDC is already doing this in Hyderabad, where it's very difficult to leave the sanitation sphere for a sanitation worker, largely because of their caste. And they don't want to leave because they know they will be discriminated if they leave, but if they leave, there will also be other castes that might enter into the sanitation, and they feel protective about it in their own way. So what we thought was the best thing to do was to make them entrepreneurs within their sector. And how do we do that is by making them contractors with the government. So if they sign if they signed for a loan with the government, with the NSKFDC, the government would then be the one who would bear the collateral. And they would get the machinery, and then they would be in charge of the process. And so we've created about 5 to 10 self-help groups, and out of them, 1/3 of them are women-led. The next one that we had done was contract design, and like you mentioned, that the contracts right now are between either the government and the contractors, or the contractors and the workers. And these contracts, number one, don't exist, or number two, that they don't actually focus on the workers. They're not pro-worker, but they're pro-contractors and pro-government. So, and the third thing is that some workers are uneducated and they just don't understand what's in the contract. So what we're doing now is to look at the contracts that already exist, and we've come up with 3 models on how they can be changed so that they're pro-worker. And the next step is going to be to actually create illustrated contracts so that the workers understand what they have and what they can have access to. And the fourth is a ID system. So most of them there is no system of identifying as a sanitation worker. There's no Aadhaar card for a sanitation worker, right? And that limits them from getting access to SC schemes. So with coming up with a identification system, an ID card, which will be government issued, which will then help them have access to these schemes and benefits. So these are 4 out of 16 solutions. Our solutions go to hardware design, looking at IoT and sensors in sewers, having a She Safe campaign for safety of women, sanitation workers, breaking the family legacy, seeing how we can educate more children of sanitation workers, look at machinery, look at safety gear. So we have at least another 12 solutions that we're now in the process of piloting. But we think this is a good start, and we're very encouraged by the work everybody else is doing.
So let me give a little bit insight from the technical perspective. I'm an engineer actually, looking in the sanitation, particularly of this on-site sanitation for last couple of years. So let me get it straight. Like, let me put a question across you. How much of you in the room cleaned a septic tank? Anybody has an idea how your septic tank looks when you discharge lastly? Any of you? So this is a room speaking full of manual scavengers. The problem lies here only. Then think about the common people. We make a septic tank in a vulnerable design, and we make it not cleaned it properly, and we make it like a cake inside, which is beyond the science to put a machine inside to clean. It's only human can go by the time. So problem starts from here and ends here actually. I don't know about like no, there is no stairs actually. There is actually kind of a levels given in alternate ways, so that at any like kind of a very very clogging moment, somebody has to go inside. So from morning we've been discussing the desludging rates, the level of size of septic tank and everything. But we people who are much educated and sitting and talking about manual scavengers, we built a septic tank knowing that like there's a particular people who wants to clean at a time. Imagine if you know that nobody is going to clean, then we are going to put huge science inside. We're going to put sensors, we're going to put a gas detectors, and like we're going to get a like ring in the mobile, like okay, it's a time to clean septic tank. Nobody's there, let's go and clean. So you can't clean it by chemical. No. So septic tank, it's actually your both your feces and your urine both goes inside. Your feces start settling down. So scientifically, when it goes 2/3, we should clean it. But we wait till it completely full and your flush is not working by the time it's choking inside. That is the time we call people. And by the time this guy comes and put a safety gear and goes inside, it takes another 5 hours. But what we do, if he has 1,000, take 2,000 and clean immediately. That's the next phenomena. We know that there is a particular group of people always available. And whatever we educate them, whatever we do them, again come back to the systems, because we have made this error the root cause of the whole system like this. So from 1939 we've been speaking about manual scavengers. So it's 2018. Last week I've been to one field survey. My colleague Aditya was doing it. It's in Tamil Nadu. I just like went to just see, they're doing a survey of this a village to see how the on-site system is there. I went and saw there is 112 manual scavengers in a village where there's like 6,000 population. And then I was thinking like what will be the scale in India? And there's a huge caste nexus. This is the 4th generation of this manual scavengers doing. They're like purposefully going inside and they have to clean it in such a way that it can't be cleaned through any kind of machines actually. So the problem basically lies why we didn't construct a proper septic tank knowingly, like there is always a firefighters to do some kind of cleanings. And now the standards are coming, we're speaking about standards, but still I don't think like anybody is going to follow the standards or nobody is going to voluntarily clean the septic tanks. So this is kind of like, this is how the dynamics is in India. When I was in Sweden, I have seen like, when there's a clog choke in a sewer network or something, the sanitation workers come who gets like twice the pay of mayor. His skill set are like classified as standard A skill sets. He get a license and he wears like astronomical suit like and goes inside. He takes X-ray diffraction the equipment to measure the stem growth in the sewer network and see how it is. But the sewer network, if you go inside, it has a proper venting chamber, platforms and everything for him to go. That is how the standards there. But we construct the sewer line knowing that like if any choke, like we can put people at any time inside. There is no a ladder also there. He has to jump directly to neck deep to just sort the problem. So this is kind of how the dynamics like. We've been working in Udaipur to do a complete city level intervention on this fecal sludge management and to see how safety and things has to be done there. So 2 months back, Tripti and Yogni, we all like did a two-way. Yogni is a legal expert and Tripti is also a social expert here. We did a two-way discussion with all the sanitation employees in the presence of Commissioner for 4 hours. Luckily, Commissioner didn't go after the welcome address. He stayed and listened actually. What's happening and things. He stayed till the last. So we had a group discussion, two-way discussion, like to see what they also want from us if we want to implement some system in the place. So major out of the people said like we are forced to go inside even though we don't want to go inside because if you go inside we get the money. So like taking that into account, we put that clause in bylaw. We are also framed a bylaw for the whole city stating that like if anybody is forced to work, the first appellate authority will be Commissioner himself. So any sanitation worker can directly like address Commissioner to say like through messages or through any mode of communication, he can give a message to the Commissioner that he is forced to go, he is forced to make work to earn his livelihood there. But all these things are fine, but still like they have to go inside only to get the money. If they raise the voice, they'll be pushed out of the system to move to some other city to do the same kind of work actually. So there should be enforcement should be happening right now throughout India. Who have built a septic tank of wrong design should have been like corrected it, and a proper Banner Scavenging Act given a 44 equipments actually, the safety gears. They are given like safety gloves. Safety gloves as per Occupational Health and Safety Hazard Act. There are 18 kind of gloves are there. Polypropylene to rubber gloves. If you put a polypropylene gloves and go inside any sewer network, it's going to corrode after 15 minutes because of the hydrogen sulfide gas present inside. There is a lot of thinking should be done before like making the specification. And I think if a sanitation worker puts everything go inside, he will choke to the death because of this congestion of the equipments and everything only before the gas goes in the nose. It's so heavy. He should like it will be some 3 kgs extra in his whole body. So it's good like they came with the 44. Maybe the next stage can be a more specific thing, very customized design for these people so that like they don't feel it's a burden. And a climate friendly. If outside if like Delhi in the summertime will be something around 40, inside the sewer land it will be some 50 degrees actually. It will be double heated inside like. So wearing everything, if you go inside, he'll have boils throughout his body only like. So we are in the very nascent stage of like developing all these things. Maybe like pushing more. As Raman sir said, like the SOPs are coming out. Maybe it will be more interesting to see the SOP as all the specifications tried out on different kind of sanitation workers when they're cleaning and everything. Yeah. So this is my understanding.
Yeah, I think more or less everything has been covered. But when it comes to solutioning, I mean, we have been like talking about the issue, but specifically with the communities. And one thing which really comes into my mind is that, you know, whenever you're looking at this community, we always tend to, you know, look at these from the work perspective. We do not maybe take the 360-degree overview of like, you know, what's their life, how, you know, their life entails around the work, around their habitation. I mean, just to give an illustration, I mean, there is a typical ghettoization amongst within the community. So, you know, their habitation. So, when you look at all these schemes, when you look at all the benefits of, you know, the welfare benefits that needs to be reached, including when it comes to habitation, the tenancy rights, everything comes into question. So maybe it's time when we look at solutioning, we need to look at from that perspective, because only then you will actually get to the crux of the problem. And also, like even as per the Act, or even the I would rather go by the Supreme Court judgment. It has always been referred to as, you know, there is a difference between liberation and rehabilitation. And if we cannot rehabilitate without liberating them from their, you know, the profession, vis-a-vis elevating their dignity, I don't think it makes much of sense. And so when you look at these the ways of rehabilitation, the difference, you know, in accordance to the Act, how the camp has to be organized. Now, some of our presenters, they also pointed out, like, there is like the provision of giving 40,000. Have you ever asked the community how do they avail 40,000? I mean, the one of the simplest answer they would give you is that they would want this money to maybe get their daughter married. So one is that knowledge per se is actually absent within the communities, and how much as a civil society we have done in terms of taking it to them and making it them as a liberating model. So even in holding of some of these camps, I have not come across any example where a government official has actually visited these people, the habitation or the ghettos where they live. It's always that there would be an agent, there would be even NGOs who would go and stand on their behalf. So unless until they break these silos of living in the officials living in their own glass ceilings, they would never get those feelers like how and what it is needed there. And so it is also on the flip side of it is that it is the communities also which they themselves feels that lack of dignity, that where a camp is held, they would have to walk down to that place, and the entire city looks at them and identifies that, okay, this is a manual scavenger. And I'm sure, despite of historical, and since generations they have been into this profession, they still, I mean, as of now, they shy away from actually looking at the tag. And none of the uniforms, none of the I-cards will actually elevate them to a level where they can get liberated, to a level where they can feel that what they're doing is a dignified job. And even in the pretext of their say some of the skilling efforts, I mean they themselves have some interactions I have noted that they would want to get into livelihoods which does not actually attach with, or is it somewhere attached to some kind of inhuman excreta, whether by protective gears or with or without protective gears, that's a secondary matter. So somewhere we need to have those feelers, and surely whenever you're looking at those solutions, we need to look at some of these innovations. I'm sure our engineer friend, I mean, he would be one of the best person to answer. Have you looked into some of the sewer lines? We are still operating on the force of gravity. We haven't looked beyond gravity. Look at my friend. They might have you might have seen in Sweden or in other countries. They have gone beyond gravitational force. You have large pumps. You have large fans which operates and which pushes where you don't need human intervention. So I think some of these solutioning or some of these innovations, like I recently with the Safai Karmchari Andolan, we tried to look into, and not just we, I think even the Niti Aayog, they wanted to come up with some of the solutioning with some of the innovation technologies of how to actually get into sewer networks as well as septic tanks. While with Safai Karmchari Andolan, what trade we held this Sanitech very recently, where they came up with all kinds of designs, different kinds of designs available for say mechanical intervention. So it's time we need to look at such solutions. And one of the last thing definitely is what we find that we have to overcome. Whenever you're looking at this community, by and large, we look at it as caste politics. We have to overcome that. It is a profession, no matter how sad or how undignified it is. We see very less of unionization of it, and I'm sure that many of the even the cadres who are working on this, they themselves do not want to get unionized, but there's a reason why they do not want to they don't want to get unionized. We need to look into those perspectives and make the community less vulnerable getting into caught into the caste politics. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. So I think after having spoken for about 15 minutes, a good time to reveal my fraud. I don't actually work on manual scavenging or even sanitation. I work on government accountability. Government accountability has its own complications, unfortunately, and the issue of manual scavenging is not only related to citizen-state interactions. It's also there's a large societal component to it. There's other issues to it. There's numerical strength. There's all sorts of problems, and I've tried to understand some of these things quite beyond me, and I don't know if I will ever have an answer, but I'll keep thinking about it. What you can do about government accountability and to make the government more accountable to the people is to ideally set up systems which allow for two things: decentralization and downward accountability. For instance, why is it that a central government entity has to sanction loans through government banks and so forth? Why can't corpuses of funds be created with these so-called SHGs or whatever the collective efforts that are being made? Why is it that every decision needs to go through the government, central government, then the state government, then the local authority, and then so on and so forth, till the time that the whole affair is infructuous? These are some of the things that need to be questioned. If there is, for instance, no benefit that is being given to the people from the scheme, why is it that nobody has actually questioned it? Why is it that the people haven't questioned it, the people who are supposed to get them? These are some of the larger issues around it. One can't really get into aspects of why marginal communities cannot unionize or why certain caste groups do worse or better than some other caste groups, but it's a fairly simple solution. There's only two ways. If you are burdened by an identity and that identity gives you a certain handicap, there's only two ways of getting around it. One, you sort of make that identity redundant. You either move out of it yourself or the identity goes away, or one way or another nobody identifies you as that person. Unfortunately, to my mind, technocratic or technological solutions will not do that. The other thing that can be done is for the identity to collectivize and to create a larger political power for themselves vis-a-vis other identities, and then you indulge in the same sort of games and the same conflicts that any other identity. But there have been instances where lower castes, or the so-called lower castes, have managed to become dominant in certain parts of the country. Not everywhere perhaps, but certain parts. Given that these are the only two solutions, I don't see how technology has anything to do with either of them. Technology can certainly take care of manual scavenging, but I don't think it can take care of manual scavengers. The government can perhaps take care of manual scavengers, but in order for the government to do so, the manual scavengers will have to push the government to do so. We have been struggling with bonded labor, for instance, for the last many years, and we still have the largest number of bonded laborers, and we don't necessarily talk about it because probably not in vogue at the moment, but the fact remains that we haven't been able to liberate bonded laborers. What makes us think that we can do that for manual scavengers? And so therefore there are multiple facets to it. Technology is certainly one of them, but that's not the answer to the caste issue. That really is beyond me, honestly. Everybody from Dr. Ambedkar has been trying to collectivize the lower caste, hasn't happened so far. Let's hope it will eventually.
Thank you. So, I mean, the solutions, of course, are not, easy, but they are definitely, like, people reflected on, and there may be many more solutions which can be done. But of course, manual scavenging and these practices are deeply entrenched into our social systems also. Like many of us who are social science students, and what Devashish just said, it's not so easy that you could be liberating them. But what we are saying is that it's not that because it is a caste that we cannot do anything about it. So we can quickly have certain observations and comments from the people if they are interested to make it, and then we can break. Yes, you can speak into the mic.
I would like to, people around here would like to ask them, there is a lot of mechanization. Just think of ETP, effluent treatment plants. Then we have sewer treatment plants. Those are to be first innovated. And then we have to have, some sort of handling of sewers, which needs to be encompassed with the skills, which needs to be either incorporated amongst the people from developing world. And then we have to have
the city and the municipalities, they are to be trained how to organize such events and how to manage those, which is, that's not available even in NDMC area or in a smart city. Smart city can be built if the sewer can be handled in the most dignified and in the most mechanized way. The compressor can do lot of things. As a technical person, I know you can't touch, you don't have to touch the excreta. Automatically there are sewer pumps, compressors, each and everything is there. But it should be the government and the other people, political will to do it, and the municipality will to do it. I think nothing is impossible. Thank you very much.
So I had a specific question for Anahita. Yeah. So you spoke about your pilot in which you are like somebody is issuing identity cards to sanitary workers. I was just curious how that's working out, if at all it has started. Are there any stigma related issues, because once you have an identity card identifying you as a sanitary worker, is there any, like, how's it just working out, because like we are working on something, so we'd like
Right,
to
so
know.
unfortunately it hasn't started yet.
Okay.
So we're not exactly sure. But I don't know if Venkat, who actually works in Warangal, has seen anything. He might be aware of this.
When we're giving ID cards, like someone mentioned, they're actually not ready to accept their identity as a manual scavenger or something, but that is not true. When they're associated with the ULB directly, let's say they're directly employed by the government, they take pride in saying that I'm employed by the government. Right? That we have seen in the behavior change program that we did with the 300 sanitation workers they participated. Almost more than 85% of them said that it gives them an identity and kind of social respect in the ULB as well. So yeah.
Yeah, my question would maybe to you, in fact, or to the panel, is, in fact, from what we are hearing, and I also don't work on sanitation, is training should be done at the ULB level for people who work, because, talking about contract, there's been a lot of contract around solid waste management, and we know what it did. It actually reduced the cost of public services, because what you did is you pay people much less, and that's all you do. So, I mean, your idea of contract, okay, it's interesting, but what I mean is, how is the ULB going to make this contract a real contract? Exactly what was said before, and that means that how do you make sure that people who make these contracts are going to actually respect the workers? Because this is also a crucial question. This is what Amrish is actually asking. So what is planned to train municipal officers and municipal commissioners to make sure that the people whom they are going to contract are respected and considered really as part of providing public services? Is there anything about this, or are they penalized if they treat people badly? Are they going to be put on probation, or to be having some, taken off their job for 30 days if they treat people badly? I mean, what is done in this direction? If I take a cue from what's been said before. To me, this is very critical.
I agree.
It's definitely very critical. I don't have the answer for that. I think it's very difficult to actually write that into a contract or make sure it's enforced. But I feel like what we're trying to do is at least take a step in the right direction. And we're hoping that the contracts that we create are at least helping the sanitation workers, are better for them, make sure that they have access, and make sure that there is something they sign. Because a lot of people said there are no pay slips. But if they sign a contract, they have to get a pay slip. If they sign a contract, they know what their rights are in the contract. Then they'll actually be able to ask for them. And we hope that all of these measures will help them be able to find that redressal if someone's treating them badly, or if what the consequences to that action or what the consequences to that treatment would be, I'm not so sure. But
so in Udaipur, what we did is, like, when we had this meeting, and with the outcome of meeting, we put a particular clause in this bylaw, like any sanitation workers is forced to work to get in some on-site system or sewer without any proper gears or against his willness, he has a right to complain to the Commissioner Director and Commissioner First Appellate Authority. And if a complaint is made and it's found to be true, then the proceeding starts with the MS Act. It's a cognizable offense and the contractor is getting arrested and a parallel criminal proceeding will start against him. It's not the contractor is getting, the whole contract is getting out of the thing, because like the people who lose a job, only the contractor who is held responsible, who has signed the contract with the municipality, will be held responsible for such an act of putting labor forcefully inside any system. So MS Act take place from there.
One point there is, the SOP that has come recently that addresses some of the issues. But we need to also be mindful about the fact that a large number of sanitation workers are in the informal sector, wherein none of this are operational.
So I think, Laliti, you want to say something?
Yeah, because I represent an organization, Sulabh International. Many of you know about that, and we have a Sulabh International Center for Action Research. We have a lot of literature, but I'm learning, and because I know about government functioning, being in Planning Commission now, Niti Aayog for about 30 years. So I think you rightly said, besides training ULB workers, for which I think Joshi ji is doing a lot, Safai Karamchari Commission, Safai Karamchari Corporation, Ministry of Social Justice Empowerment, and state departments who are dealing with this subject, their training, empowerment is required, and for that, Anjuji, you can invite some of them when you have this meeting, so that they know what all is going on. Their accountability, Devashish can ask them right here, what are you doing? So they need to be engaged and they need to be empowered. And then the other side of the story, manual scavengers, what are their compulsions to come out of this? And what are the compulsions of others to enter in this profession? About a couple of days ago, I was addressing some MBA students from Columbia University at SP Jain Management School in Mumbai, and after the theoretical story telling, I took them to a railway station, I think Andheri railway station, where we have community toilet. We have about 9,000 community public toilets around the country. How it is functioning. So I interviewed the person who is sitting there to collect money. It's pay and use. And I asked, wherever I go, I ask their caste, because I am a student of anthropology, sociology. But we have technical persons with us, public health engineers, civil engineers. I interact with them. So it's a good, very rich experience today I learned. But one point which I want to make is invite them during these discussions, and their capacity building is also required. Thank you.
That is a very good note. You spoke most of the points that I wanted to speak on conclusion. So one is that as a researchers, practitioners, government people, it is a subject which needs everybody's deliberations and action, as you said. And it is not that only civil society has a solution or a government has a solution. It has to have a collaborative effort, and we all, I think, as practitioners and researchers who are gathered in this place, and there are many more who are the potential partners but are not at the moment present here, need to do some collective action. So what I was suggesting that, in 1 year's time, when the whole nation is going to declare, move towards ODF in 2019, I think the next year should be on, whether when we are moving towards ODF, have we actually looked at these aspects of, inclusion. So, and the next year maybe we should have a kind of a joint something, from our collective, and there we should invite the ministries and all. So I think this is a very good step which we should take. And as I said, it is not only the government which needs to be trained or the sanitary workers. As citizens, like what Amrish was saying, we are not aware at all. And when we interacted in Angul, I was telling in Priya's conference that day, then when we talk to people, they say, the middle class who are calling these people to go into their septic tank don't even know that, this is something which is against the law and it is prohibited, they could be punished and all. So they say, okay, if we don't call them, we have to, in fact, they think that they are doing a great benefit to this community by, giving them some opportunity to earn money. So I think the awareness has to be done at each step. You know what Raj was also pointing out. It is not that only government has to be trained or, you know, civil society. It also is the middle class and the citizens of this country who need to be trained and who need to be capacitated. So thank you very much for your active participation. I know this half day was very less, like I said, but we tried to discuss a lot, and I think this is going to take us to the future, some of the future steps that we can take together and also individually. Thank you very much. The lunch is waiting outside. We can have more interactions during the lunch with the people. And thank you so much for the panelists. They really are very busy people working in the ministries, and I know how it is to work in the ministries and the departments and also. So thank you, Joshi ji. Thank you, colleagues from Priya, Dalberg, and also CPR colleagues and everybody who came together at this moment here to reflect on some of these challenges together. Thank you so much.